We've got everybody checked in and ready to roll.
Go ahead, you're open to both.
3,
Put it over to the slate now.
2, 1. Take camera 1. Go, John.
Welcome to the Washington Post.
Welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Leanne Caldwell.
I'm Yasmin Abu Talib.
I'm David Ignatius.
That was quite an intro. My gosh, we should probably just leave it right there.
I've hit the big time. Washington Post. I can go home and tell my parents what I did today.
Between Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Washington Post Live itself, we are now reaching hundreds of thousands of homes across all 50 states.
The power of this platform is it takes people into the world of ideas.
Audience members of Washington Post Live are part of the conversation.
I would like to ask the audience, how many of you knew before today's event that heart disease was the #1 killer of women? Okay, just me.
Whether it's with cancer scientists or politicians.
This panel, I think, was originally called, 2 women against Putin. It really should be 3 women against Putin. So
the better way to get things done, as I've demonstrated, is by putting a group together and negotiating something that's good for both points of view.
So tell me what your plan is.
Oh, we have lots of plans.
I think Washington Post Live offers journalists like me a new way to do our job.
Their work is hugely important.
A new way to connect with our audience.
Hello, Senator Schumer. Welcome to the Washington Post. This is going to be fun.
A new way to deepen our engagement with people who care about the Washington Post and our mission of gathering news.
The Washington Post also said that we were the best film of the year, so that was pretty cool as well.
Yes, well, I mean, the Washington Post doesn't lie, Jeffrey. You know that.
I'm still having a lot of fun, Kat. A lot of fun.
And their individuality comes through more so than just their title.
Thank you for being the agents and the warriors of the light and truth.
That is the lock from the night of the burglary.
Jeff Bezos bought it at an auction.
Right.
And we're trying to find out how much Bezos paid.
Right. Come back next week.
I'm so grateful to be on a platform like the Washington Post. I subscribe, I read, I love the Washington Post.
Thank you. We need films like this. So thank you very much. Stephen, Lynn, it's been great to talk to you.
And I'm quite honored that the Washington Post should want to talk with me. Thank you.
I cannot thank you all enough.
Hello and welcome to Washington Post. My name is Vineet Khosla. I am the Chief Technology Officer of the Washington Post. And today, thank you for joining for this event where we will focus on the new age of AI. In the past 18 months, the imagination of this planet has been captured by the advances made in the world of generative AI. Companies are trying to figure out how to derive value from this technology and best serve their users, while countries are trying to figure out how do we safely deploy, how we responsibly deploy and develop this technology for the better of our citizens and our planet. Fortunately for us, today we are joined by people from the government sector, from the private sector, and think tank who have been thinking about these problems, and they will be in discussion talking about these issues. Our first conversation today will be with the pioneer of digital era, Steve Case. He's the founder of AOL, and he has a new VC firm called Revolution, where he's investing in AI in what he calls small tech entrepreneurs across the country. He will be in conversation with my colleague, David Lynch. After that, my colleague, Kat Zakraski, will be in conversation with one of European Commission's top digital policymakers, Roberto Viola, and the CEO for Center of Democracy and Technology, Alexandra Reeve. They will examine this fine balance that we have to drive between innovation and risk in the development of this technology. Before we get started, I would like to thank sponsors for this event, AWS, Amazon Web Services, and in full disclosure, the current owner of Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, had a semi-interesting career before us. He was the founder of Amazon and AWS. But seriously, thank you all for taking the time to come out today, join us in this important discussion. I will hand over to my colleague, David Lynch. He will be in conversation with Steve Case after a short video. Thank you.
I do think we need to err on the side of making sure AI is open to all, err on the side of making sure the leaders in AI 20 years from now are new companies, new entrepreneurs that didn't exist, and just as with the leaders of the internet today are companies that did not exist.
The light touch approach to regulation, the early days of the internet probably is too light, but the heavy touch that we're seeing in places like Europe with some of their proposed AI regulation likely would be too heavy and stifle some of the innovation. America needs to lead the AI revolution.
Good afternoon. I'm David J. Lynch, Global Economics Correspondent here at the Post. I'm delighted to be joined by Steve Case, who now needs no additional introduction. Steve, welcome to the Washington Post.
Good to be with you.
So let's start with some news of the day. OpenAI announced, I think just yesterday, the latest iteration of their ChatGPT version 4.0. And one industry executive reacted to it by saying a business could cut the cost of accessing intelligence by 50% overnight by adopting this application. Is that an overstatement? How significant an iteration do you think this is?
Well, I think it's a big step forward. It's interesting for me to watch this march because, as you know, AI really was first invented 75 years ago. But for most people, it became kind of the AI revolution when ChatGPT launched about 18 months ago. And since then, they've been iterating quickly and forcing other companies, both some small companies as well as some big companies, to get in the game. And I think the pace of innovation as a result has accelerated. I did spend some time last night, this morning, using the new version. It's very impressive, and exactly how much costs can be cut, I think, depends on the nature of the particular industry and the particular company. And you're also seeing kind of some of these horizontal platforms starting to give way to more kind of vertical AI focused on particular industries. But there's no question we're at an inflection point here. It's great that people down the street in Congress and the White House are focused on this because it is an opportunity for America to lead the next revolution. But I do think we need to do it in a smart way and also a more inclusive way. So it's not just about the entrepreneurs in places like Silicon Valley, it's about people all over the country.
Yeah. I want to talk about what lawmakers may get up to a little bit later on. But first, tell me a little bit about the way you approach this sector as an investor. What are you looking for? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff when you make investments in the AI space?
Well, when I stepped down from AOL, which is over 2 decades ago, I started this investment firm, Revolution, which is located not too far from here in Washington, D.C. And we now have a seed fund, a venture fund, and a growth fund. So we're sort of investing at every stage of the evolution of entrepreneurial companies, from the very early stage when they're still just more of an idea to the point where they got a little bit of traction, to the point that they're really scaling and are really seeing significant growth in their business. We've backed companies, later stage companies, including some that were birthed here, even in the food business, like Sweet Green and Kava, 2 fast casual concepts. We backed Clear, which has a biometric technology some of you may have used when you're in airports to kind of get through the security lines before. We backed companies like Tempest, focusing on using AI to basically have a more precise diagnosis for cancer and other kinds of things. So we look at a variety of different sectors. We're obviously looking for entrepreneurs that are doing things in an innovative way. We usually are looking for companies where there is sort of a policy angle to it, because we think most of the big innovations in the next 10 or 20 years, there will be some of that to it, as well as companies that see partnerships as a way to really accelerate their growth. That tends to be areas that we focus on.
When we were talking, having a preliminary chat about this, you mentioned the difference between horizontal AI and vertical AI. Explain to the audience what you had in mind, and is one flavor getting more attention than it should?
Well, I think the momentum around the large language models, the platforms, if you will, like a ChatGPT, and there's obviously a number of them appropriately are getting a lot of attention. That's more of the horizontal approach. What you're now starting to see, really hundreds of companies all around the country focusing on a particular sector, a particular industry. Like I mentioned, Tempest in the healthcare area. We backed another company in Seattle called Carbon Robotics. Who's used AI in terms terms of farming, ag tech, to more precisely, in their case, identify weeds and then use laser technology to kind of zap the weeds. So you're seeing a company back not too far from here in Tyson's Corner, Virginia, called Zephyr, is using AI to do drug discovery in a smarter kind of way. So those are examples of verticalizing AI. So it's not just the generalized platforms. It's trying to solve specific problems or unleash specific opportunities for specific industries, and often those are going to be done by companies that are just focusing on that with a kind of a laser focus on what does that particular industry need. So you're starting to see more and more of those, and we're obviously interested in backing them at Revolution.
And is AI broadly at the point where just about every business is investigating it or can find ways to put it to profitable use, or is it still embryonic enough that really only the big players?
Well, I'd say in the last year or so, more and more companies that maybe hadn't been paying attention are trying to figure out what it is and how it might impact their businesses. But certainly the larger companies that have larger businesses and have both opportunities but also some risks if they don't pursue this are the ones who initially focus most on it. If you're just a small business and have a few employees and are focused on a lot of different things, you may not be quite as kind of laser focused on it as some of the larger companies. But I think the broader dynamic, which is why we're having a discussion here, is it has come on steam, even though it was developing for many, many decades in a way that now is really having a transformative impact on the economy and on society and on politics, which is why now everyone around the world, whether it be business leaders or policy makers, are starting to focus on it.
Yeah, and there's obviously been a lot of concern about the potential labor market impact. And of course, anytime a new transformative technology rolls out, there's always sort of a neo-Luddite reaction in some corners, but I think there's more serious concern among some fairly serious players today. Mark Cuban, I saw interviewed a few weeks ago, and he said, in his view, that the disruption we're going to see in the next 5 years or so will dwarf everything we've seen in the past 30, and in his view, at least, will be unambiguously bad for employment. What's your view of the labor market impact, and what would you say to folks that, the average person who might be a little bit concerned about what this means for his or her career?
I share the concern. I think that, as you say, the history is these technologies tend to disrupt certain jobs and also create other kinds of jobs, including some that people didn't imagine would ever be new jobs. And over time, the history is new technologies end up creating more jobs than they destroy. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of disruption in the meantime. A lot of kind of people that lose their jobs, don't get the training they need. And that's part of the reason we've been arguing so hard now for a decade to try to make sure entrepreneurs can start and scale companies everywhere in the country, not just on the coast. For the last decade, 75% of venture capital has gone to just 3 states, California, New York, and Massachusetts. As a result, people living in Wisconsin or Ohio or many other places feel like they have to leave there to go to the coast because that's sort of the land of opportunity, in part because that's where the capital is. We want to make sure more of those companies start and scale in those cities, so some of the job loss, whether it be from AI or robotics or other technologies that will be lost in those communities, can be offset, at least in part, by new companies based there creating new jobs in those communities. So we can't just sit back and say, nobody knows what's going to happen here, just let it rip. You've got to figure out ways, whether it's a policy intervention, as Congress did, as you know, with things like the CHIPS and Science Act, which included investments in semiconductor research, but also investments in tech hubs to help accelerate what we call the rise of the rest. You have to be proactive in setting the policies to do that. I think you have to also be proactive in backing new companies, because new companies are the big job creators. It's not small business. It's not big business, it's new business, companies under 5 years that are the big job creators, and we need to make sure we're launching those and scaling those new businesses all across the country, not just in a few places.
That's an appropriate segue for our first audience question, which comes from Hannah Kozik from Washington, D.C. And Hannah asks, what can we do to combat or at least mitigate inequitable access to AI?
Well, that's part of it. How do you make sure that these platforms are open to everybody? One thing I've called for, including at the Senate when they had some of these AI forums that Senator Schumer has and a team, a bipartisan team, have led. When I was testifying several months ago, I said one of the areas to focus on is making sure this doesn't result in big tech getting bigger. It also has to unleash the next generation of entrepreneurs. One way to do that is to make sure AI really is open, much as the internet was open. And so calling for open source as one part of the AI strategy for this country, I think is very important. The history lesson for those who don't know it, when the internet really took off, and particularly in the 90s, it was based on a series of decisions that were made by government, including the government funding, DARPA funding the creation of the internet, the core technologies, and more investment in R&D is critically important. The government deciding, in this case, a judicial decision, Judge Green, to break up Ma Bell, the phone company, and create regional Bell operating companies, which unleash competition, and telecommunications prices dropped significantly, making the internet more affordable. And then also a decision in Congress to pass the Telecoms Act, which basically commercialized the internet. When the internet was first founded, even when AOL was founded, it was still illegal for consumers or businesses to be on the internet. It was for educational institutions, government agencies, not for consumers, not for businesses. Those decisions, each of them important, all of them together significantly important, really unleashed the internet era. We need to have a similar set of decisions as we think about the AI era, and things around open source is part of it, things around more investment in R&D. Our investment in R&D as a percentage of our economy has gone down over the past several decades. We need to reverse that. And we also need to make sure we're winning the battle for talent, which is both developing our students in a smarter way and also kind of continuing to be a magnet for talent from all over the world. So passing kind of sensible immigration policies has got to be part of the strategy as well. We laid this out several months ago. I co-chair the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And we laid out a whole national entrepreneurship strategy, not just for AI, but more broadly. And those were some of the key components. So that's the way to make sure it's more inclusive. AI and other technologies are open to everybody. You're making the right investments, including building out tech hubs, so there's innovation happening in communities all across the country, job growth happening in communities all across the country, and making sure we're smart around our education system as well as our immigration policies.
You mentioned Chuck Schumer's AI Insight Forums, which I think started up last year. How did you find those discussions? What was the caliber of the discussions like? There's, I think, a sentiment in technology circles often that the players on Capitol Hill, many of them from an older generation, even older than right. We are in some cases, believe it or not, don't have the technological grounding to really understand this.
Well, it's fair. It's fair that a lot of people, particularly people in Congress, have to deal with a ton of different issues. Right. They can't be experts in all the different issues. Some understand it in a quite sophisticated way. Others are still learning. But good for them. The fact they recognize it's an important technology which will have broad impacts on the economy, on society, even around our security, and they need to spend more time understanding. They need to listen to people who are currently active in it. I think is critically important. I also think it made sense to do that in a bipartisan way, which I supported, and do that where you brought people together, and it was kind of a private discussion, so it wasn't playing for the cameras. It was basically trying to make sure people understood the nuances here. My understanding is based on that, Senator Schumer, probably the next day or two, will be laying out a roadmap based on all that learning and proposing a series of steps, which I think will end up being quite productive.
Yeah, and if you were king for a day, what do you think the 1, 2, or 3 short-term or near-term legislative priorities should be?
Well, the tricky thing here is you need sort of a Goldilocks solution, not too big, not too small, just right. I think some of the things that have been discussed and proposed in Europe are too heavy-handed and likely will stifle the innovations. The flip side of that, saying, as it was in the early days of the internet, it should be a light touch or no touch. Just let the market figure it out, I think is also a mistake. You need something in the middle. And I touched on some of the aspects, including more investment in R&D to drive innovation innovation, trying to figure out ways to make sure we are developing talent so we can lead in the AI revolution, both homegrown talent and recruiting talent, doing some of the things around regional distribution of venture capital and other incentives, the tech hubs, and better coordination. I think having a body, someone proposed a new agency that can help coordinate this across different industries and across different parts of the government, I think could be a really helpful step forward, as we've seen again in the past with other industries that have emerged. So that coordinating body is important. But it is important when you think about this roadmap that it's not just thinking about what to regulate, it's also thinking about how to unleash innovation and not just focus on what might go wrong, but also focus on what might go right. So it's not just about guardrails to protect against bad things, it's what are the forward-looking policies, and we've talked about some of them, that really do maximize the likelihood that America leads in the AI revolution, and we do it in a more inclusive way.
And you mentioned earlier the need to try and make sure that the development of AI is not just the province of big tech, Microsoft, Apple, Google, right, but that there is space for innovation. Are we on the right path to do that? It seems like the capital required, the systems required, the electricity required all scream big. Can a small player really get in here?
No, I worry about this, and you're right. The capital requirements, particularly in these horizontal AI, the broad platforms we talked about, are really quite significant. And so it is the big companies making the big investments to drive those platforms for the most part. There's some exceptions like OpenAI, but for the most part, it's the tech giants leading the way in the investment and the development of those kind of core platform technologies. And I have nothing against these companies. They're a key part of our innovation ecosystem in this country. There's a lot to celebrate, but I do think we need to make sure it's open to entrepreneurs and the next generation of, whether it be Googles or Facebooks that didn't exist 30, 40 years ago, will also happen in the AI world, which is one of the reasons why I've called to make sure that AI is open. And the open source aspect is a key kind of policy pillar of any roadmap going forward.
Yeah.
The reason that's important is that the history of technology tends to be in the early days of these platforms when people are trying to establish them and trying to establish leadership in a competitive environment, platforms tend to be open. Once leadership is established, they start closing down. That happened with Twitter, that happened with Facebook, and there's a risk that might happen with AI, which is why, going back to some of the lessons from the early days of the internet, forcing the phone companies to open up their networks, what was called open access, was a key part of what drove the success of that industry and America's leadership in that industry.
Yeah. And obviously this is not a U.S. only story. I'm curious what you think the impact will be of the increasing separation between the U.S. and China on advanced technology development. Anything that has any sort of potential military application, and AI certainly fits that bill, is something where walls are going up.
I think walls are going up, and many of those walls I think should go up. I think that we've probably been a little naive over the last few decades in terms of how China was doing things in terms of developing their tech sector versus how we were doing things, and they clearly have more of a top-down command and control approach to it. We have more of a bottoms-up, dispersed kind of approach to it. And some of the things that have happened recently, I mentioned the Chips and Science Act, and also the bipartisan infrastructure bill, things like that have been steps in the right direction. I think having public policy related to this makes sense. And some people criticize industrial policy, but at the same time, as you look at the history here, the market hasn't always worked, and having some government investment in these core technologies and steering it in the right direction is important, without the government getting involved in terms of picking winners and losers. It's again a balancing act, kind of trying to get to that Goldilocks solution. So I think stepping up and trying to make sure we do lead, and even some of the recent things that I know you wrote about with tariffs, I think is part of that. Also, I applauded last week, which I know you also wrote about, when Microsoft made a $3 billion investment to build an AI center in Wisconsin. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier about both the opportunity for place-based innovation, what we think of as the rise of the rest, and also recognizing that we are seeing the verticalization of AI. In that particular case, it was more around manufacturing and how AI can help advance manufacturing. And so having more of that, I think, is also important. And some of that is because private companies, in this case Microsoft, have taken the lead, but also some of the policy we've put in place, I think, is important. And so yes, some of these things are happening because of concerns about China that did motivate bipartisan support for the Chips and Science Act. But I think if you take a step back, some of that is necessary. It probably does complicate some of the global relationships. That's a little bit above my pay grade, but I think America's stepping up in a more forceful way to lead in this next wave of technology is important.
Great. We're almost out of time, but I've got to ask you, since 30 years ago, you were probably among the best at seeing around corners to see where technology was headed as you introduced the internet to the masses. How different is life going to be like for the average person 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as AI plays an increasingly prominent
role? I think it's going to be significant. It may take a little bit longer for some of these things. I've learned that sometimes kind of revolutions happen in more evolutionary ways, and some things will happen in 5 or 10 years. Some things that probably have the biggest impact will take longer. But it goes back to some of the things I mentioned. I think healthcare needs to be addressed. It's basically too inconvenient. It's too expensive. Sometimes the outcomes aren't very good. AI and other technologies can usher in a healthcare system that is more consumer-centric, should be more affordable, should lead to better outcomes. Education needs to also be improved and be more personalized. AI can help that. I mentioned even in terms of farming and food, AI is trying to help that. And so almost every aspect of life can be improved. Every industry can be reimagined. And it's not just AI, but AI and a suite of other technologies are going to enable the innovators to do that. We just need to make sure, going back to what we talked about, America does lead in this next wave, as we've led in previous waves, and we do that in an inclusive way in terms of more people all around the country seeing the benefits of these technologies, not just some of the downside. Entrepreneurs all across the country having opportunity to start and scale companies, which means getting the policy right here, striking the right balance between innovation and regulation is critically important. Hopefully we'll get to the right answer, and hopefully, whether it be 5, 10, or 20 years from now, people will see the benefits in terms of their everyday lives that these new technologies have ushered in.
Yep, great. Well, we are now out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. Steve Case, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you all.
Steve and I have to leave, but you should stay put because we're going to have plenty more on AI coming up.
When the world of business is constantly changing, you need to stay ahead. So what about AI to generate new possibilities? Machine learning to predict what customers will like. Or expand your business by forecasting delivery routes with real-time data. With the most experience in the cloud, imagine how AWS can transform your business.
Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for joining us here in person on a rainy day in DC and also online. My name is Lana Wong, and I'm a founding member of the Diverse Women Moderators Bureau, Moderate the Panel. So in this session, we'll be talking about delivering meaningful value with generative AI. And so, as we've heard, there has been so much hype about generative AI's power to really transform the ways we live and work. And the real question is, how do we translate that hype into real-world applications? So luckily, we have someone here who's been dedicated to that issue and who has literally helped hundreds of companies adopt AI. So I'm pleased to share the stage with the head of AWS's Generative AI Innovation Center, Sri Alapralu. And Sri leads a global team of more than 200 scientists and strategists who help customers design, build, and launch generative AI initiatives around the world. So welcome, Sri.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's great to be here.
All right, great. So let's dive in. Given your vast experience, what are some of the most interesting and powerful generative AI use cases that you've seen, and what's getting you the most excited?
if you look at generative AI and where it's going, it is one of the transformative technologies that has come around in the last few decades. The potential of transformation is immense. The innovation is going to be immense. We have worked with thousands of customers across the globe, all industries, all geographies. And when we look at the use cases, we can think of, broadly speaking, 3 different groupings of where technology is being leveraged, generative AI in this case. The first one is reimagining, whether you're a public sector entity or a commercial enterprise, reimagining your customers and stakeholder experiences. It could be new products, new innovations, new interfaces that you're able to bring using the technology to enhance your customers' experiences. So I'll give you some examples. Most of you are probably familiar with Coursera, the online learning platform, fairly popular. In their case, they're taking advantage of large language models and foundation models to infuse and generate feedback and insights based on student assessments so that they can provide those insights back to students in a timely manner with a lot of insights that help the students achieve their objectives. Now, to do this, they have instituted what's called a retrieval augmented generation framework, which is RAG for short, ensuring that the generated content is based on reality, based on guidelines that they have, so that you can ensure that the generated content is grounded in reality. They've also implemented evaluation frameworks. All of this to say they've enhanced the speed and the efficiency of the workflow that they have in place for student assessments in a grand scale. The second example is TED Foundations. All of us are familiar with TED Talks. As part of that, there is a vast collection of podcasts, content that gets generated on a regular basis. Now, how do you ensure that that content is discoverable? It's easy and personalized for audience. So that's another area where TED Foundations have leveraged large language models on AWS using that generative AI technology to bring forward those content and the material in an appropriate and an easy way for users to consume, but then also take it a step forward, personalize it so that it's easy, it's actually addressing the unique needs of users that are on the platform. The last one I'll say is Crisis Text Line, which is a nonprofit. In their case, they're using large language models to understand the nuances of a crisis conversation and then be able to understand how and what interventions are appropriate to bring into place and bring those interventions in a timely manner so you can actually impact life. So lots of exciting work happening in that first bucket. The second one is employee productivity. This is more internal facing, right? Whether again or organizationally. Things like code generation, text summarization, content generation, lots of interesting use cases happening in this space. One example here would be Data Friendly Space, again, a not-for-profit, a humanitarian organization based in Europe. In their case, they're using large language models. They've built a platform called Gannett, and that platform allows you to surface insights that users can then use, humanitarian organizations around the globe can use to bring interventions and effective policies in place. So surfacing information in a timely manner and making it actionable is a good benefit that they're driving. Last one is productivity improvements, right? So think of it as more back office routine processes that you do as an organization, and how do you infuse innovation into that space? An example here would be Pfizer, global pharmaceutical giant. In their case, they're using large language models to generate draft content for patent applications, medical and scientific content that allows experts to review the final version to make sure it's all accurate, and then speed up innovations to their patients. In one example, one of their use cases is saving $750 million to $1 billion in annual savings. That's just one use case. And they have hundreds of use cases that they're planning to roll out. So all in all, lots of enhancements that are happening. So the effectiveness is immense, and we're just getting started. So there's a lot of exciting work ahead of us.
Great, wow. Well, you've clearly worked with hundreds of customers to build generative AI proof of concepts. So what are some best practices that you've seen to move from the POC stage to scale?
Yeah, so last year, 2023, was the year of experiments. companies across the globe were trying to figure out what this technology means, which use cases are appropriate for them, how do they go from experimentation into production. We're already seeing that trend move to going into production is becoming a priority. In Q4 of last year, going into early part of this year, we're already seeing that curve rapidly go towards production. And some enterprises are looking at hundreds of use cases, not just few, right? And they're reprioritizing based on immediate value. What I would say when you want to look at which use cases to go with, there are a few things to keep in mind. ROI or return on investment is something that you want to keep in mind because there are a lot of shiny experiments that you can drive. But unless you have an end goal in mind, whether it's a new product, a new innovation, a new line of business, or cost savings, right? Whatever it is that you're going after, have that in mind, work backwards to use cases that align towards that objective. So that's one. Second, be flexible. Optimization is going to be critical. The technology is moving too rapidly at this point to settle on one and stay there, right? So be ready to change, optimize. The models are improving, the foundation models are improving almost weekly now. So just keep up with that. Third is you want to be thinking building securely and responsibly from day one. This is not something that you'll bolt on at the end of it. You want to make sure that those best practices are being baked in right from the use case identification all the way to building and scaling into production. The last thing I'll say is continue to iterate, continue to test. You'll find more efficiencies as you go forward and think end-to-end, right? So holistic solution, not just a model or a particular point solution, but end-to-end business value. What are you going to drive? And that's an area where a lot of exciting work is happening as well.
Okay. Great. And then, so how should we think about the trade-offs between cost, accuracy, and latency? And can we have all three?
In an ideal world, yes, you should have all three, and that's the goal. The reality is that you'll have to pick and choose between what's more important, right? So if, let's say, you're working on a use case that's a real-time chatbot style use case, internal, external, doesn't matter. There, you're going to be more interested in latency. You don't want your users waiting for a minute for the response to come back, right? Latency is going to be real. It needs to be as close to real time as possible. And accuracy is probably more important there. So latency and accuracy are going to be picking priorities. Cost may have to take a little bit of a backseat depending on what you're trying to drive. On the other hand, if you are working on a, let's say, back office type capability, which is more of a batch processing, not a real-time processing, cost may be a lot higher. Cost and accuracy may be a lot more higher value for you. So be flexible. Again, look at the use case, look at what's more important for you in that particular use case and back into it. Don't settle on one approach for all things. You'll have to be flexible in that regard as well.
Good advice. All right. So you touched on the security issue and trust earlier. So clearly trust in this whole realm is key to building successful Gen AI powered solutions. So how do you really build in that security, the privacy, the trust from day one, as you mentioned?
Yeah. Innovation is important. It is going to unleash a lot of new creative solutions. But if you're not able to do that securely and responsibly, it's not going to work in the long run, right? So, and it is absolutely possible to achieve both and do it at scale. We're seeing companies, enterprises, public sector organizations do it daily, so it's absolutely doable. Few things you'd want to keep in mind. When you're building solutions, you want to keep your end stakeholders, whether your employees are your stakeholders or your external users, consumers, users, right? Them in mind and build solutions in a manner that maintains the trust. So that's critical. The second thing you want to take into account is large language models, or more broadly, foundation models, are not perfect. They will have challenges every now and then. So you'd want to build in the right safeguards so you can mitigate any risks that arise from that. As an example, I mentioned retrieval augmented generation, which is a technique that you can use to bring your source material next to the large language model and ensure that the responses that are coming out are based in reality that you want the material to be the source, not something that's made up or hallucination happening, right? That's a good way to make sure that the responses are reflecting the reality, reflecting your source of truth, and not something that you don't want the LLM to produce. The second thing you'll want to think about is putting the right safeguards in place, right? And this is an area where you'd want to inspect individual use cases to see what is the right safeguards to put in place. So for example, again, if you're building an internal facing chatbot for a simple, let's say an employee benefits sort of a application, your tolerance level may be a little bit higher for mistakes, accidental mistakes that may happen, versus if you're building something that's external facing, it's not acceptable, right? So you'd want to look at individual use cases to see what is the level of tolerance that you have for risk and ensure that you're architecting that solution properly. And so there are ways you can do that. For us at AWS, it is the most important thing, building GenAI solutions and services responsibly and securely. And not only us doing it, but we are extending a lot of capabilities to our customers so that they can build solutions responsibly and securely as well. I'll give you a couple examples. Evaluating models to see whether the model is performing well as expected for your specific needs is a requirement for a lot of customers and should be a requirement. So to make it easy, there is a capability called model evaluations where you can pick and choose and compare across models and decide which is the right model based on, again, cost, latency, accuracy that you're expecting and go forward. And similarly, guardrails is another capability, which is output from an LLM may or may not conform to your policies and guidelines. So how do you ensure that your output is aligned to your policies? That's where a feature like guardrail will allow you to spell out in a natural language way the rules that you want to enforce. For example, you want to filter out toxicity, bias, detect certain key phrases coming out and maybe prevent those from going out, right? So you can enforce all of those policies that you may have in-house for your needs using that feature. But the end of it, you want to keep employees at front and center. There is the educational aspect, right? So all of us are going through this fairly new. This is an emerging technology that's come about 24 months or so. Everyone is learning. So keep your employees front and center, help them, educate them, make them part of your discussions around which use cases and how you're bringing GenAI into the enterprise. Involve them. Help them build some of these solutions so they become part of the solution as opposed to leaving them aside, right? That's one. Look at the use cases, as I mentioned. You'd want to look individually at use cases to figure out what are the right safeguards to have in place. The third one would be test, test, test. There is absolutely no substitute for that. And there are ways you can do that, right? So you could use automated testing, so you can do it at scale, or you can do and follow up with human evaluation or human subject matter experts at the tail end, so that before you go into production, you want that human judgment also validated. So do that at scale, and this will be a constant iterative process that we'll go through.
Great. So we're going to wrap with $1 million, or maybe it's $1 trillion question. What's next for generative AI?
Too soon to tell, but there are some trends that are emerging, and it's not a surprise. The first one is agents. Some of you may have heard of the concept of an agent. An agent is nothing but an automation of a workflow task, right? So instead of just calling an LLM, getting a response, and then you having to do something with it, you can actually build an orchestrated workflow off of a interaction with an LLM or multiple LLMs in some cases. So making sure that agents allow you to orchestrate and automate the end-to-end. And we're seeing a significant increase in interest and actual implementations using agents. We're just at the beginning stages. There's a lot of automation to come. Second one, I would say, is multimodality. So until now, LLMs, large language models, mostly text-based, text input, text output, but that's just the beginning. We're starting to see multimodality, meaning data of any input, right? So images, text, audio, video, and other formats as well, being able to go in as well as come out. And what that enables is you are able to fuse all of that information and make sense of that data and come out with the appropriate responses. So, because if you look at it, most organizations, when you look at the data that they hold, there is a vast amount of data that's unstructured, not text, not in databases. So how do you make that part of your value proposition into a solution? So multimodality is one that we're going to see a lot. Last thing I'll say is standards are evolving. When I say standards, both at a global level on the technology front, but also at an enterprise level, when you're looking to deploy hundreds of use cases, doing one-off at a time is not going to scale. So as you do few experiments and go into production, you're starting to see enterprise-wide standards that are starting to emerge. Again, this is an area where you want to keep choice in how you do things and flexibility in how you do things in mind. Model choice is a good, interesting one that you want to keep in mind because not every use case is appropriate for a particular LLM or FM. So you want to keep flexibility as you're evaluating models as well. The last thing I'll say is think big, think really big, experiment often. There's a lot of innovation to happen in front of us. We're just barely starting, right? So we're in the first innings of a long game. The exciting future is ahead of us. And if you need any help, we're here.
Great. Well, on that note, let's think big and hold on to your seats for the big ride. So thank you so much, Sri. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to those of you online. If you want to add your voice to the conversation and make sure it's not an AI-generated voice, please use the hashtag #PostLive. My name is Lana Wong. Thank you all again, and now I hand it back to our colleagues at the Washington Post.
Thank you.
When AI systems are being used today, whether it's in a chatbot or integrated into search engines or in contexts like hiring or insurance decisions, those have an immediate impact on consumers' lives. And so we need to move really quickly to try and have people think about what the responsible frameworks for governance are and legislate.
We have been the first in the world to decide that we want a comprehensive law about AI. So not just a talk, not just about self-commitment, not just about promises, but a real law with enforcement and with sanctions.
Well, good afternoon and welcome back to Washington Post Live. My name's Kat Zakreski. I'm a national tech policy reporter here at the Washington Post. And I'm joined today by two wonderful guests, Roberto Viola, the Director General for the European Commission's Department for Communications Networks, Content and Technology, and Alexandra Reeve, the CEO of the Center for Democracy and Technology. Director General Alexandra, thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Director General, I want to start with you a bit because we just heard in that video about the EU AI Act, a first of its kind law regulating artificial intelligence. Can you tell us a little bit about what the EU is trying to accomplish with the EU AI Act and where that work stands today?
Thanks. First of all, let me thank the Washington Post for the invitation to invite the alien from another world to this conference. The AI Act, it's a law about promoting the adoption of AI, promoting confidence in people. They can rely on AI. It's okay, and it's going to change for better our society. This is the goal, because sometimes, the AI Act is pictured as stifle innovation. Actually, it's a permissionless innovation law, because R&D is excluded from the law. Innovators can work in sandboxes, and real-time testing can take place even before any certification. So the AI Act is based
risk-based regulation, we say, because it only regulates the risk of AI, not the use or the adoption of AI. So there's a very limited number of applications which are regulated. So that's the philosophy. There are very few which are horrible in a democracy, which are prohibited. There are some which are very useful in medicine or in other areas, which are permitted, but they, of course, have some risk. If something goes wrong, there's a risk. And they are called AI risk, and they are regulated. The rest, it's fine. They are not regulated by the AI Act.
And Alex, I wanted to ask you, I mean, this week we've seen a series of big AI announcements from the companies. Google had its I/O Developers Conference today. OpenAI made some announcements about a new model and enhancements to ChatGPT yesterday. And so I want to ask you, can the regulators move as quickly as the technology itself right now?
So it's a tough question, right? I mean, on the one hand, the developments that we're seeing this week really do underscore the potential for this technology, the ways in which it can have a significant impact for people's capabilities, their productivity, opening up new opportunities. But at the same time, I worry that we lose the thread of the conversation about how to ensure responsible development is taking place and give guidance and guardrails. One of the things that my organization focuses on is not just how the AI developers are thinking about these tools, but the hard choices facing deployers right now. So businesses, including small businesses across the country, who are deciding whether to integrate these products into their workplace, into their services. And if we don't have responsible guarantees around privacy protections, around data security, around whether the tools were appropriately designed, around discrimination and bias issues, that leads a really lingering uncertainty. So of course, I lead a consumer rights organization. We think about this from the user's perspective, but there's also a business and adoption reason why we need to think about those guardrails and have legislators act much faster than they are now to have progress.
And Director General, I want to give you a chance to weigh in on that. I mean, we have seen the EU move much more quickly and aggressively than the US on AI legislation, but it still will be, many months, even a year, until the EU AI Act can fully take effect. I mean, is that fast enough?
Well, first of all, it took us 5 years to arrive to the legislation. And it will take 2 years for the AI Act to enter into force in full. But I would say it's normal. I mean, when we deal with such changing technology, so complicated technology, you need to give time to industry to adapt to the law. Otherwise, it's not a serious exercise. I mean, we need to have standards in place, certification systems in place, but there are things that can kick in quite quickly. For instance, in 6 months from the publication of the AI Act, the prohibitions will kick in. So it will be prohibited in Europe to do social scoring. It will be prohibited to do what is called predictive policing, to arrest people, on the basis of an AI prediction. So those things which are fundamental guardrails for the society will be immediately kicking in. Then in 9 months, the companies will have to arrive to a self-regulation code, which will be the basis then for the AI office in Europe to enforce generative AI or frontier models, which will be in a year. And then in 2 years, all the rest of the products will have to be certified. So there's enough time for the system to stabilize, because otherwise it doesn't work.
And I think the Director General raises an important point there. For anyone in the audience who just had cognitive dissonance when they said, wait, the EU's been working on this for 5 years, and we've only really been kind of thinking about generative AI for the past year and a half in terms of widespread use. It's for a really important reason, which is the regulations adopted in the EU, the types of regulations that consumer organizations and civil rights organizations have been calling for, aren't just focused on generative AI models. There are many ways in which AI systems and algorithmic decision-making are being used in ways that impact people's lives today, whether they're integrated into hiring decisions and screening resumes, whether it's public benefits programs, deciding who's eligible for different benefits. And those are the areas where we are really saying we need guardrails now, because these systems are out in the ecosystem, dramatically impacting very high stakes areas in people's lives without real guarantees about how well they work and whether they've been tested, or people even knowing that that's how a decision about them is being made so that they can try and contest it and vindicate their rights. So I do think in this AI governance conversation, there are really important conversations to have about generative AI, about highly capable foundation models. But we can't forget all of these other kind of more mundane algorithmic decision-making systems as well. And the fact that they've been around for a long time is one of the things that has advocates saying, come on, it's time to act.
And on that point, I mean, you have been participating in the insight forums that Senator Schumer has hosted around AI. I've reported that that roadmap from Senator Schumer and his working group is coming as soon as this week. I'm hearing from sources as soon as tomorrow we could see, what the Senator's plan is on AI. What are you looking for, and what should Congress's priorities be as they take this step forward?
So one of the strengths of what we've seen in the Senate right now, assuming it goes as reported by you and by others in terms of speculation, is a set of priorities that have bipartisan support. So the amount of work that has gone into cultivating that bipartisan leadership moment is really important. And so if they are naming not only that the US needs to focus on investing in innovation, which is hugely important for all the reasons that Steve Case was discussing, but also what the guardrails look like, also how do we ensure these protections and really earn trust in these systems, that's a win for that to have bipartisan support and a path forward. The big question is how we move from high-level discussion to actual legislative action. And so what I am hoping to see, both when this is released, but then in the immediate days and weeks to follow, is that bipartisan for the Senate leaders using their relationship, using their juice to really be pushing on legislative efforts. It's not going to be enough to simply say, committees do your work. Of course, the Senate committees should do their work. But in addition, we need them throwing their weight behind efforts to actually get the type of momentum and speed that we need. They've spent all of this time building the record, building the expertise, building the relationships. Now they have to use it, and it has to be on the responsible side of innovation.
And I want to ask you about this a little bit more, because about a year ago, last June, we saw Senate Majority Leader Schumer come out and say, we need to do this work in a matter of months, not years. We're almost a year out from that. We're having some markups start. Tomorrow there's one on election bills with Senator Klobuchar's committee. But is Congress moving fast enough from your perspective?
It's an interesting question, right? So there has been really good faith legislative efforts happening in the committees. I think we need them to really have that buy-in from leadership. There's a moment in negotiations, and advocates in the room will know about this on whatever side you come from in these conversations, where you need to know that the conversation is no longer hypothetical but real, and that's when the legislative drafting really gets serious. We need those signals from the top, I think, for the committee work to get over the finish line. There's the work in the Rules Committee that's happening. Another really important place for folks to look is what's happening in the Commerce Committee. That's where they hold not only some of the investment type bills, like the Create AI Act that was mentioned before about investing in the National AI Research Resource, but also where work around privacy, around transparency and explainability. All of that work so far is coalesced in the Commerce Committee, and in my opinion, there's more work for there to do, but an important foundation for them to build off of.
And Director General, we're thrilled you're here with us at the Washington Post today, but I know you have probably many other exciting meetings while you're here in DC this week. Can you tell us a little bit about what US government officials and lawmakers you might be meeting with and how you're talking to them about AI policy right now?
Well, I'll be meeting many departments. I will be meeting with colleagues and friends from the White House. I will go to the Hill and see people. So I will have many conversations about what we do in Europe, what are the ideas here in Washington, and discuss similarities, differences. But the main scope of this conversation is how we can work together. This is the real center of this conversation. How maybe something from Europe can be exported in the United States, and how we can learn from the United States, sometimes to be more there in Europe. So I think both systems have advantages and disadvantages, and the idea to work together is really to be better, both of us.
I think the unsung area of AI progress that's actually happening in the US is a lot of the conversations that are happening with the EU. So through the US-EU Trade and Technology Council and other efforts too, there have been really productive conversations around harmonizing standards and what best practices look like. We can all agree that AI systems don't discriminate. If I asked, if I did a poll in the room, I think every person would put their hand up. But what type of testing and evaluation do we actually want to see? When companies are thinking about what is the appropriate release model for a highly capable foundation model, what are the questions they should be asking? What are the questions that the public should be asking? What should regulators be asking? A lot of that, the nuance of that, is going to have to happen outside of legislative text because it's way too nuanced and nitty-gritty, and instead in standards bodies and norms and harmonized expectations. And so I think there's a lot of soft conversation that's happening in this manner that's really productive. So just an acknowledgement for that I think that's an area where people should keep looking and where we're seeing real progress, even if it's not quite as sexy a headline as some of the legislative work that's happening in the Senate.
And you mentioned those kind of soft negotiations that are happening, but I was on Capitol Hill in December, the night that EU officials were locked in negotiations over the AI Act. And here on Capitol Hill, we heard some criticism from US lawmakers who said the approach from Europe was too heavy-handed and that the US needed to move more slowly and cautiously and have a more light touch approach. I mean, what is your response to that criticism of the EU AI Act and your approach?
Well, yes, I heard the criticism, but frankly, I think it's a bit unfounded because as I tried to explain, the AI Act only regulates risk, doesn't regulate AI. So if you have a pacemaker and this pacemaker uses an advanced Gen AI algorithm to spot arrhythmic behavior of the heart, this is wonderful, this is okay, but if it makes a mistake, then the patient is dead. So this device needs a proper certification process. The AI Act is very pragmatic. It's not about philosophical issues, will robots kill the whole of the humanity. It's about responsibility of a company that is putting a product in the market and then getting this product certified in front of the things you just mentioned. I mean, is privacy respected? Has the algorithm been tested by a third party? Where the data set comes from? What are the performances? Has the algorithm been red teamed? And what are the outcomes? These kind of things to make sure that people can say, I like this product. I want to buy a product with AI because there will be accidents with AI. And like in aviation, I mean, when there's an accident, there will be front page. And people will try to forget that AI, maybe with autonomous drive, has saved thousands of lives. But the single accident will be, people will be scared about it. So having legislation, product legislation in place means that people are feeling safe. Like in aviation, they know there are rules, there are checks, there are independent checks, and the product is safe. Although we might be scared when the plane shakes like this, we know and we can start repeating, this is safe, this is safe. So it's a bit the same with AI. I mean, creating a governance of third parties, people that understand, which are not part of the companies that develop the product, to make sure that there's a safety culture, a culture that respects human rights and respects the privacy of individual. So AI Act is about those products, so very short term. It's about a person going and asking for a loan for buying his house for his family, and the algorithm tells, no, you are not eligible for this. Can I protest to a human being? Can I know if this algorithm has been programmed without bias? The algorithm denies a life insurance. Again, is it well done or not? I mean, so this is the thing about the AI Act. And about, again, heavy-handed, R&D is out, as I said. Startups and other companies have a long period to adapt to the thing, and they have sandboxes. So, frankly, I'm tempted to reject the accusation that is heavy-handed.
And I'm just curious, your take. You're obviously talking to policymakers both in Brussels and here in Washington. Do you think the criticism is unfounded too?
Yeah, so CDT has an office in Europe and was involved in the negotiations on the AI Act. I do think that the Act has kind of become subject to caricature here in the US. And there were many instantiations over time and different ideas that were suggested. And I sometimes think that the US critique of it as being heavy-handed or monolithic really speaks to earlier versions and some of the amendments that were suggested rather than where the text landed itself, which really is a risk-based approach. And anytime you ask in the US what's the right approach for us, people say, oh, a risk-based approach is the right approach. That is actually where the EU AI Act landed. The big question, I think, and what does make it complicated, is going to be implementation. It's a long law. It is hard to read. How it intersects with existing obligations under the GDPR, how it's going to interact with the Digital Services Act, how it interacts with European, fundamental equality laws. All of that is complicated. So I think businesses have their work cut out for them now, just interpreting how the act is going to apply to them. Advocates have their work cut out, thinking, what can we expect? And then the regulators, frankly, will have their work cut out, thinking exactly what the oversight regime looks like. But to me, that's an inherent part of any complex issue that you're going to regulate. And so I don't actually think that's a flaw of the law. It just means that there's work to do in Europe. To really think about how to build on the promise of the statute. Much as in the US, there's a lot of work to do thinking about what our governance regime will look like going forward.
And Director General, we only have about a minute left, but I'm going to throw a pretty tough question at you.
Oh, no.
So today, there were the first high-level talks between the US and China on AI risks. Do you think that these countries can work together to address this technology?
I think it's necessary. I mean, if you see the history of technology, the human being, you really posed a tough question, but I give you an heavy answer. Humans have been excellent in using technology to advance, but also desperately got it wrong because we have the civilization machine and we polluted the whole planet. We have discovered how to work with atoms and we invented then atomic weapons. So every time there's a new advancement, and AI is a gigantic advancement, the humans are getting right and getting wrong at the same time. Maybe here is the chance, before we get it wrong, that the society of nations at large speak about the existential risks of this technology. So I think it's difficult, but it's something that I think is very necessary.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Director General Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us today at Washington Post Live.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for joining us as well. We really appreciate you joining us both here in person and online. And for those of you in the room, please join us out in the lobby for some wine. Thank you.
It was fun. Thank you.
It was fun.